to Load Bearing Beams. Every week on this show, as you know, we ask one burning question. This week, that burning question is, what lessons are we to take from Red Dragon? And I have an answer, and I think it's something we can take away with and implement in our daily lives, and especially over the course of the recording of this podcast. And that lesson is kindness, Lacey.
Oh.
We need to be kind to each other and generous.
Is that the message of the fucking movie?
Of course.
I said fuck within the first sentence that I spoke on the...
I don't think of fuck as being unkind.
Yeah.
A fuck can be among the kindest things in the world.
I broke my own record.
But...
It's like a credit bush.
The whole time, Brett Ratner's message of let's be kind to each other was just screaming at me, and I think...
What?
We have too much... There's too much adversarial back and forth between you and I on this podcast, and I think we need less of that. I think we need to take the lessons of Francis Dollarhide and...
I'm adjusting my microphone. This isn't because I hate you. It's because I just want to get it right. Okay.
That doesn't bother me at all.
You just said that it does.
No, but...
Okay. Wait.
We're being kind to each other, so...
Oh, okay. No, I can totally do this. I'm going to rise to this challenge.
All right. So, hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is Load Bearing Beams. My name's Matt Stokes.
And I'm Lacey Roth.
We're a married couple. We married each other in a ceremony at a Justice of the Peace almost 8 years ago. Remember that?
Almost.
What? Okay.
You know, I'm not good at remembering things. That I remember. I do remember it. Yes.
Yeah.
Like it was yesterday.
So we're a married couple who hosts a podcast about movies and relationships, but mostly movies.
Oh.
Can you tell the listeners some more about that?
Sure. Load Bearing Beam is a movie that you watched a lot when you were younger, while the components of your brain and person were still baking in the oven. So these movies found their way into your frontal lobe or just into your brain in a way that other movies get locked out after a certain point in your life. It's my theory. They become such a part of you that quoting them or referencing them is second nature, and when you realize your loved one or someone you just like does not have those references, you feel the need to show them the movie immediately so that they can absorb that vocabulary, and then we can both speak fluent Dirty Dancing, only that is not what happens. Usually one of you are very bored or just not moved.
Or maybe both of you.
And sometimes it's both, but if it's you that's showing the movie to your loved one, you also get to be embarrassed and confused about your judgment. So it's wonderful when those movies are actually awesome and they hold up. That's a Load Bearing Beam.
Yeah, and you can be filled with anxiety while watching the movie because you feel the searing judgment of your partner. Like, you really made us watch this.
And you're hard to read. I feel like you I don't know if it's because of the podcast, but you don't tell me right away.
I play my cards.
Yeah.
Keep them close to the chest.
Mm-hmm.
I do log my opinion on Letterboxd. So you're obviously not following me on Letterboxd.
I'm aware of your opinion after the podcast.
Yeah. No, I do like to. Well, I'm saying if you want to know.
Don't you tell me on the podcast?
That's true.
Why would I?
But
also
if you wanted to cheat code, you could just do that.
I love.
Yeah.
I'd rather you just reveal it to me on the fucking podcast.
Yeah, I would too.
I mean, if you're bothering to withhold it, just withhold it, and you can reveal it when you're right. Why would I read your diary?
I don't know. Okay. The listeners can, though. So, withering judgment, resentment. Well, how could you make us watch this? This is a piece of shit. You don't even like it. I can tell. I can see you're not laughing. You're not smiling. You keep going, it's going to get good soon, I promise. And then it never does.
I don't remember these
conversations. Most of these don't apply to the movies we talk about now because we've done all our
Load Bearing Beams
pretty much.
Right.
Well, we've just done all the ones where it's like, oh, you have to, please, you must like this. If you don't like this.
We're stretching our definition a bit now because this movie that you chose definitely is. It doesn't feel like a you movie, or especially not one you'd watch a lot.
No, and I probably saw it 4 or 5 times.
It still seems like a lot for this movie.
It was a lot but there was a period in my life when I was about 15 or 16 where the Dr. Lecter series was like my series. I read all the books.
It was a TV show?
No, I mean just this series of books and films.
Oh.
Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal were I loved them. I loved the books, loved the movies.
They were your Anne Rice.
You were my Anne Rice,
Which was
exactly.
how, when I was that age, that's what I was consuming.
I did during a speech class, I did a dialogue scene. I went up in front of the class and did a Hannibal Lecter voice and a Clarice Starling voice. I played both parts and did their exchange about the lamb screaming.
Did you want to do that now, or?
And what were they saying? What were they doing, Clarice? They're lambs. They're the spring lamb. No, I took a lamb and I was very frightened. The ranger was very nice to me. I ran and ran.
Okay, get back to the lecture though.
And you still hear them, Clarice, the screaming of the lambs.
You did that in front of the whole class,
Yeah,
and they loved
and
it.
it killed.
It is good.
Yeah, it was the Beatles at Shea Stadium. But so yeah, this was my introduction though. Red Dragon is the movie we're talking about, and that's the 2002 movie, Red Dragon, and
You did not read the book.
It was my introduction to the whole series. I had not seen Silence of the Lambs. I had not read Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, okay.
But I
This
went to
is
see
what-
this movie just because of the trailer. It's like, ooh, that looks cool, and also it's R-rated, and my mom might let it go see it.
Mom.
So we went to
Catch her
see
when
it.
she's
Me and my friend
drunk.
Caleb. Hi, Caleb.
Hello.
He's been on the show.
Yes.
Went to see it, and Caleb had seen Silence of the Lambs. I think I've referred to this before, but he one time spent the night at my house and told me what happens in Silence of the Lambs, and I was like, that's the scariest shit I've ever heard. Oh my god! And it was way scarier than when I actually saw the movie. His
His version of it was way scarier than the actual movie.
Yeah, because there were years that elapsed between that, but I would have nightmares. I would be scared in the middle of the night because of what he told me about the movie.
Okay, well, this is very rare that I ask you to reenact two things, but can you lay it on me?
And then Hannibal Lecter eats the guy's face off.
Okay,
oh my
yes.
god, that's so scary. I don't remember these specifics. But rest assured, he did a
and then
dynamite
there
job.
was blood, and I'm quoting your 9-year-old sister, so, as everyone knows those quotes.
Sure, of course.
That she went through a phase where she wanted to tell us a scary story all the time, but it was always just, and then they went to the store, and they unpacked the groceries, and when they opened the eggs, it was blood. Everything just ended with, it was
Yeah,
blood.
because there seems to be, for some kids, there seems to be a period of time where you learn these urban legends. Did you
Yeah.
know that one time a woman walked into her house and her head came off because the door, or I feel like there were a
Because of
lot
the
of, I don't know. I'm struggling to think of it.
The one with
I
the
heard-
hook, the two people at Lovers Lane, they're making out. They hear
Uh-huh.
a scratch on their car, and they look around, nothing's there or something. Then they drive off, and when they open their door, there's just a hook in the door. They were nearly hooked. I don't know. I might even not be remembering that correctly, but something about a car and a hook and a scratch.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Actually, the thing I heard the most about was horror stories of what can happen to you in a pool because of you getting sucked down
That's
into
true. Oh yeah, your
suction
frickin-
thing.
Your innards being sucked out of your butthole.
which 100% is not true. It can't be true.
It's not that. Yeah, that's not actually a thing that happens. What did
Or,
happen
hair
was
getting
hair,
caught.
That did happen.
But how do you know?
I know that pools are the most dangerous part of any house. I know that drowning is one of the highest ways people accidentally die. So I'm okay with the
Sure.
drain part. You know what? Don't come at me with no facts.
But you're also not having any facts. I'm just saying I heard lots
Yeah,
of horror
but
stories
one
about
of us should.
your large intestine getting
That
sucked
one
into
I
the
agree is silly.
to the drain of the pool. Pools are dangerous enough. We don't need these fabrications.
I mean, I think it was just a way for parents to be like, please don't spend so much time down there. Down there, you just look dead. Come back up. Now, being parents who are, absentmindedly watching their kids and their friends in your pool, you're just like, head, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Head up. I see a nose, perfect. And then you're back to your game or your book or whatever. So, yeah, kids just playing around down the drain. Don't make me wait. Dead or alive, motherfucker.
I don't know what you're talking about. We've never had a time where where the kid wasn't just begging us to constantly watch and or play a game with them.
We had lots of long days during COVID where Macy could not go to school at all. So we were swimming like every day. And there were a bunch of times where I didn't go in. I was just like, nope, we do this for 10 minutes every day. I'm not getting in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was those times.
Okay.
But yeah.
Red Dragon was a film that
Did we
came out in
even say the
2002.
name yet?
We did. Red Dragon, 2002. But we need to take a step back.
Please.
Well,
What?
wait. You had seen this movie before, right?
Once.
Yeah, and we watched Silence of the Lambs like a year ago or so, which might be like one of my 10 favorite movies, honestly.
Really is good. It holds up.
It's a perfect movie. And Red Dragon in a way is a bad filmmaker, Brett Ratner, also a bad human being, saying I'm going to attempt to just like kind of copy that movie. And because he's not smart and not a good director, he gets all kinds of things wrong. But the source material is so strong that it's
Exactly.
like it's still kind of entertaining.
Still super compelling. And I can even get past Edward Norton's blonde hair.
Yeah, which is tough.
Like feathered bangs.
Yeah,
It's rough.
it's rough.
And I am a Edward Norton fan, so
And you love bangs.
no.
So Thomas Harris, in 1976, he publishes a novel called Black Sunday, which is about terrorists attacking the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl at Tulane Stadium in New Orleans. They fly a dirigible into
Shut
Tulane
up.
Stadium and blow it up, or they try to. I
but-
read it. I don't remember what happens. But after that, he writes a book in, I think, 1981 called Red Dragon. And I've been rereading it this week, and it's great. But it is also so filled with what you could think are cliches, but only because this started an entire genre of crime fiction.
And that is while we were watching it, it did feel like, but you pointed out this movie takes place a few years after this genre really peaked. But Kiss the Girls, Along Came a Spider, there were a handful of really great ones. And then there was this second tier of we just need a mystery to wrap this around. We need a up and coming gumshoe.
Now you're talking, you're talking about sort of the middlebrow adult thrillers starring Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Which I think
Angelina
certainly
Jolie.
we're trying to ride the wave of Silence of the Lambs, but I guess I'm talking more about books than anything else.
I'll step out
But
of this
to
conversation.
center
I'm not talking about
serial
Silence of the Lambs.
killers and what?
I wasn't talking about Silence of the Lambs. I was talking about Red Dragon. That movie with that director felt like that caliber. It felt like it was, it felt like the time to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Certainly.
talk about your books.
Here's the thing about my books. Okay, so to center a serial killer and how upsetting, I guess, how gruesome that actually is during a time when serial killers were in the news all the time. It was the golden age of serial killers. So this was, let's take what they do very, very seriously. Let's show it. And then let's also talk about how kind of fucked up the people who have to solve the crimes, who have to catch the serial killers would have to be.
Right.
And so he has this concept of this FBI guy, Will Graham, who's able to enter the mind of a serial killer, the kind of toll that takes on him and how he loses his humanity in doing that was also a big thing. And that's been copied a million times, but it was originally done in this book, Red Dragon.
And I'll bet it was far more interesting to read than to see, given the director. I mean, like, they certainly spoke about his ability, Will's ability. Harvey Keitel especially mentioned it a few times, but then you really barely see the flashes and like the step, like him getting so consumed with stepping into someone else's brain.
100%. They mention, yeah, you're
They
exactly
say
right.
it, they don't
say
show
it,
it.
yeah, and that's kind of, well, we check that box. Look, he's really messed up. He's really disturbed. I tell you, I'm really messed up and disturbed, and that's it.
It's a total cheat to have that memory book as the credits, because
It's
it walks you through the
so
entire thing.
easy, yes.
That they do. Where it's like, and then this happened. Look, mental hospital. Look, keep this in mind. Something about a grandmother.
Yes,
It's
the
just-
most helpful exposition book ever. That you don't, when it's done, because as the opening credits are done, and then it just changes scenes. You said, whose book is that? And I was like, it's just the movies book. I don't know.
But
It does turn out to be
The guys.
the killers.
But it does get given to Will, and it's the biggest, weirdest handmade book. It looks like the Book of the Dead or
Yes.
something. And then he just hands it to him, and you know he's about to like get on a flight to Florida. So it's just picturing Will with the world's biggest scrapbook that
Yeah.
looks like the devil's asshole pooped it, and just
No, I know.
I'll
It's
walk
like,
through
my
security with
grandmother
this."
raped me with a Coke bottle. Evil death, 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 death.
Okay.
But it's the
Not
most
so much about
hackneyed.
what's in it. It's just that he is going to travel with it. That's funny. I mean, it's
Oh, yeah, you
basically
did say that.
It's
That
the
was funny.
size of a carry-on. It's just
Yeah, he had to-
the practicality of handing it to him right before he goes to the airport was funny
He
to
has,
me.
yeah, put it in its own bin.
Sir, there's human hair coming out of this
Sure.
slider. Yep. That's
So I'm sorry about the confusion about how this started a genre, but serial killers kind of as a concept, and the show Mindhunter was a lot about this. Was about the sort of science of, or the practice of treating serial murder as a different kind of crime
Right.
from simple traditional cop work.
something that needed to be cataloged and documented and patterns found and just a whole practice and branch and speciality needed to come from it because they were not equipped to handle it it was very rare, but when it happened it's the most horrifying thing, and an idea of a person compelled to kill at random.
Yep. And it's the thing that I find scariest in the world is somebody who has patience. It has way
Right?
more patience than me.
That's the worst. Like, this guy's careful.
If somebody wanted to kill me and they were smart and they were patient, they could do it. It would be so easy. I'm not careful. I could be careful too, and it wouldn't matter. They'd figure out my patterns.
I could open the door and the UPS guy could shoot me. I don't think it's hard to kill someone.
It's not hard to
It's just hard to kill an entire family while they're sleeping.
Yeah.
That's all. It takes a little bit more planning, but I still think they could do us pretty easy. Our garage code is 12.
5454. So, to invest in the psychology, you have to understand the psychology. Let's center the psychology. That was sort of the big innovation that was happening in criminal science at the time. And then Thomas Harris's book really dove into that.
I've always felt kind of guilty about my interest in serial killers, but I have an interest in psychology and in motive, I think, more than your average person. And I'm always trying to figure out why people do what they do, and the concept of that there is no evil, there's only nurture and nature. And that book that I wrote, the book's called Evil, right?
Yeah.
And I loved that because it's hard to admit that people aren't compelled by unnatural things that they're chosen. We all have given the right circumstances, people do horrible shit. And I think there was some power in understanding those things. Anyway, I think that was my attraction to being interested in serial killer stuff, and not so much like the voyeur part of it.
How? So you call yourself a fan and enthusiast of?
Yeah, but not like
The
a
genre
fangirl. Like I just find certain stories compelling. The ones that do get into the psychology and the backstory are the ones I like. It's the part of the stuff that they do, the actual criminal parts. Those parts are the parts I don't like.
But you also love the solving of a crime, I feel like, don't you?
Oh, if it's in movie form or like I guess podcast form.
You've listened to
too.
lots of podcasts, like true crime podcasts.
Yes, but they're far less about the solving. The ones that feel dirty, the ones that are just about. And then he took his knife, and like I don't really enjoy hearing about. Not that anyone enjoys it, but the actual crime parts, I do not like hearing. I like. And he was careful, and he methodically picked out I like the preparatory stuff, I like the backstory stuff. But yeah, so like something like Serial, that's not a serial killer, but it is about a crime, then about the investigation around it. That's interesting, but just to hear the dirty parts of what happened, I don't like. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. But I thought when I heard the first episode of Serial, and they were centering memory and the way memory can fail us,
I love
and they're talking about, events that happened 15 years earlier. And first they're like, all right, so what'd you do yesterday? And like,
Right.
nobody can tell you what they did yesterday. And then it's like, well, okay, so what happened 15 years ago on this one random, unremarkable day?
Right, or even just last Tuesday, last week. I'd have to go by like the meal plan that I put on the refrigerator and like
Yeah.
I'd have to do so many tricks. Thank goodness for text and
All the
email and all the shit that
Companies tracking us.
Yeah, thank you, Google.
Yeah, Waze can tell me exactly where I was, yeah.
But like witnessing a fight, I feel like I would make up all kinds of details.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's the thing about memory, about the very act of just explaining, the very act of accessing a memory changes it, because
Yep.
putting something into words are not perfect at articulating, at convincing, at conveying what actually
Yeah, it's
happened.
like
You're going to change its
re-recording
meaning
over
a
tape.
little bit.
Yeah, like re-recording over a tape and trying to do the exact same thing again. It's like, well, you just erased what actually happened and gave me
Yeah.
a shittier version.
Yep.
Or less accurate version.
And maybe we were talking before the podcast about like there were definitely at first we definitely felt like serial killers used to be a bigger thing, right? There were more of them in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and then we were wondering, but is that true? Like maybe this is just a thing that feels like it's true, but the data is going to show otherwise.
My instinct was wrong, and in that my initial thought was, well, we just don't have the bandwidth for it. We don't celebrate a serial killer enough to like, incessantly put them on the news and every little fact come out. They're not in the 24-hour news cycle, shows and stuff. Or that's not what I meant to say. 24-hour news shows. It's all politics. It's all bigger stuff. It's mass things that affect lots of people. We're less and less interested in things that just affect one family or a handful of women. And to me, that seemed right. Like
At the same time,
that is what should happen. That's why we don't have.
But
serial
at the
killers.
same time, that like for one thing, Donald Trump, who is just a symptom of a larger thing, but made sort of politics national and made every story about sort of this one thing.
Well,
that kind of sucked up all the oxygen too.
yes, but everything has become about things that have to do with bigger groups of people, mass, terrorist acts or mass shootings. Those are about multiple families. That seems like you should cover that. Or activism. That's a whole country getting behind an idea. Like it just seems like bigger ideas have been happening, but I wasn't right.
Well, at the same time,
I mean that was true, but
yeah.
that wasn't why.
But just before you say that, where like all these mass shootings and shit happen, that are causing way more deaths than like, the son of Sam, who like stabbed 9 guys over the course of 10 years versus the Las Vegas shooter who shoots 53 people or whatever. And way less is done about that. And it also seems less scary somehow. I mean, I don't know. Kind of has either taken the place of that, but also seemed less interesting and less something you want to think about.
Yes, it seems less interesting to think about a serial killer. It feels retro. And then the serial killers, you do find out about something about it being in modern times. And actually the most recent one for the United States is 2014, so even that. But there's still something too modern about it. Like the circumstances are like, and then he put on Facebook. Something about that just kind of
That's true, yeah.
takes you out of it. It's like, oh, well, okay, that's not the right kind of serial killer stuff. Or like they found them on Craigslist. Like, well, that ruins it for me too. That's shouldn't have been on Craigslist. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and in like,
But there's something less. Yeah. I don't know.
from the person committing the crimes from that side, and then from the side of the people trying to solve the crimes. Like in Red Dragon, there's the scene where they're trying to decode Lecter's message in the ad in the paper, and they're like, all right, we've only got 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes is going to be taken up with the guy running to the library to search through books.
Right.
And it's like, well, that wouldn't be an issue right now. You just in 10 seconds come up with the answer by looking on your phone.
Well, and you're hitting on a part of why that. So we found out that there was a heyday in the 80s, but there was a boom. Like 670 people were killed by serial killers in the United States that year or that decade. And then it went down by like 100, and then the next decade 200, and then a huge dip in the last decade down to just 100 people. But it's actually kind of boring why it was that way. 80s is just when DNA and and the whole having a department in the FBI or in police stations that can recognize when something's serial and not just a one-off.
Yeah, talking to each
identifying
other.
a serial killer, and the connectedness of police reporting systems, just to be able to, you can't skip around in different counties and states and have them not connect the dots. The 80s is when that became possible. So it's very likely there was not a boom in the 80s. There was just the ability to know.
Yeah, in other words, like in the 50s, two unrelated murders could have been caused by the same, could have been the victims of a serial killer, but we didn't have the language or the resources to connect those dots at the time. So we just don't
I
have.
always think about how much easier it must have been to be Jack the fucking Ripper. Like, ooh, Jack the Ripper. He's the first, like, real, popular.
That's
They
who
had to, like, wind up cameras then, and they had to, like, spend 10 minutes to take a photo. They're like, whoa, that sounds hard, Jack.
was it John Mulaney who did the joke about
probably
like cops back then? They're like, oh, there was all this blood at the crime scene. Ew, clean it up.
Got on my spats. Actually, I don't even know. Was Jack the Ripper in the 1900s?
I think late 1800s.
I'm in the 19th century.
Yeah.
So probably no camera.
So
But there are photos, though. See,
oh yeah, no, there were photos.
Okay,
there were
okay.
cameras.
Just hold still, dead body. That dead body is doing great. 10 more minutes.
So crime, the 80s are the height of the serial killer. The 80s are also, but that's a big spike in crime, and nobody quite knows why, and nobody quite agrees on why it went down after that.
Cops sprinkling crack in the bad neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's a very plausible explanation. A lot of people think it's leaded gasoline.
That's an interesting. I never heard.
Yeah,
that
like
before.
lead makes people crazy.
Well, lead gasoline and the stopping of using lead paint. I mean, because you get paint chips in your mouth. I mean, kids chew on things.
Yeah. So yeah, all that exposure to lead over a long period of time makes people more impulsive, makes people make worse decisions.
It's a slow burn.
I'm sure that there's going to be all kinds of things we're going to discover about our world. They're like, Jesus, they didn't know that drinking water was terrible for you.
Well, you've never seen what it looks like when I get my nails done. Not to brag, but especially the way that this is just 5 layers of powder. It's called dip. And so they just like moisten the nail with something, and then they dip it in this fine powder, and then they do it like 5 more times. So that's what my nails are and the whole time I'm just thinking that is definitely a carcinogen.
Yeah, what am I doing to myself?
Well, no, I don't. I'm more just worried about the nail person. That's all they do all day long.
Oh, that's true. So Matt is a hatter. Matt is a nails person,
Mm-hmm.
a manicurist.
Matt is a good alliteration.
I
lost track.
Yeah, me too. So serial killers. Lacey loves them. So this book is like the sort of foundational text of an entire sort of genre of all the podcasts, of all the movies. It gets adapted into a movie in 1986 called Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann. I've seen that movie a few times.
Michael Mann was an actor.
Nope.
I always do this. Who am I thinking of?
Let's see. Let's
The one
work this
from,
out.
Usual Suspect. No, not Usual Suspects. Reservoir Dogs.
Michael Madsen?
Michael Mann. I do that
Yep,
every
yep.
time.
You do that every time. That is
We've
true. Every
done
time I
that
bring up Michael
already,
Mann.
yep.
Yeah, Michael Mann, director of Heat, Collateral, Miami Vice. Adapts the movie. It's not a big hit. People really like it today. It is really good. I watched it
We should watch it.
relatively recently, and then I watched some of it today to sort of get ready for this. And it is very, very. It's fascinating to watch a movie that has Hannibal Lecter in it, who's this iconic character who was not iconic and would not even appear in the book upon which the movie that would make him an icon had even been written. So this movie was made before Silence of the Lambs. The book was even written. So he's played by Brian Cox. He's a very minimal presence in the movie, but the movie, unlike Red Dragon, very much wants to dive into how tormented Will Graham must be, and makes it much more about the
process.
not the cat and mouse, but the way they're not so different. You and I, the killer and the hero.
You spend more time in his mind. Tell me the name of the movie again.
Manhunter.
Okay.
And they had to call it that because the producer of the movie, Dino De Laurentiis, says we can't call it Red Dragon. People will think it's a kung fu movie. So they called it Manhunter,
Fair.
which was dumb. But it's just such a weird. I don't know. Anyway, 1988, Silence of the Lambs gets written. It is a big hit. They make a movie out of it. 1991, Silence of the Lambs. Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins both win Oscars. The movie wins Oscar, Best Picture, Best
I didn't
Director.
know they both went up.
Yeah. It's the only the third time that's happened where a movie has
Who were the
won
other?
picture,
Casablanca?
director, actor, actress. It happened one night in 1935.
Is one of them in the last 10 years?
No, and then the next one was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh.
Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher. And that movie's a giant hit, a giant phenomenon, redefines the crime genre. Directed by Jonathan Demme, who is not... I didn't know much about Jonathan Demme until he died, and I started kind of in 2017, and I kind of went back into his filmography. And
Take me through that journey, please.
All right,
What are his films?
So he makes a ton of movies in the 70s, a ton of like B movies and documentaries, and then in the 80s he makes a movie called Melvin and Howard that Mary Steenburgen won an Oscar for, and it's kind of this like slice of life comedy dramedy.
Mumblecore before Mumblecore?
Sure, it's a lovely movie, and over the next decade he just kind of makes like really grounded, really funny but also serious movies about just like people and their complexities.
Tell me what they
so
are.
Something Wild, Swing Shift, Married to the Mob.
Oh, I've seen that one.
You have? Yeah. And he also makes lots of documentaries. Ooh. But his big thing is just human beings. Gotta love them. Gotta hate them. They're flawed, but ooh, there's something there.
Those humans, they have something.
Yeah. He's just a very empathetic
consciousness
person.
Yeah.
And when you watch Silence of the
I'd
Lambs,
like
you would like him. Because it's not filmed like a horror or even a thriller, he kind of films it like he would film any of his earlier movies. And because he has so many shots of the characters looking directly into the camera to put you directly there with them and make it so intimate, that makes it all the scarier because you're dealing with just horrific shit.
And you know it's done well because I couldn't even have put my finger on that. Like, that's not something that stood out. It's just that the effect sits with you, not he shows you, doesn't tell you. You know?
Yeah.
Like, he does it in such a way that's like, oh, I just feel the impact, not the fact that they're still
it's not showy. You're not like, what's going on? This is so jarring.
Right.
It's just once it's pointed out to you, you're like, oh, this is unusual.
Yep, exactly.
And apparently it's very difficult for actors to do because it's just totally against their training.
Well, have you ever tried to look dead into your camera during a Zoom? I try to do it every time.
Which they say you're supposed to do, but
and
I
can't.
But
it's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
I do it.
But
it took a long time to do it.
And if acting is reacting and you're acting with somebody, instead of looking at them, you just have to look at the camera. But because of that, you're with Clarice down in the dungeon talking to Lecter. You're with her all throughout the movie. She's a lone woman going into situations where she's just surrounded by men who are just constantly like just leering at her in a way that the movie doesn't call attention to. But once you notice that, you notice every scene in the movie has this going on.
Well, and they go out of their way to show how small she is. I think I even asked you the last time we watched it, how tall is she? And I think she's my height, like 5'3" or something. But like, do they just surround her on purpose with giant men? But yeah, I see. Okay, so Matt's about to play a scene from Silence of the Lambs.
And it's not playing. That's great. Okay. I don't think of you as a short woman.
5'10" is the bare minimum for a model. 5'7" is the average, and I'm 5'3", 4 inches less than the average.
So everywhere she goes, there's the scene where she's at the funeral with just the dozen male cops, and she has to get their attention and get them to leave the room. And I remember Roger Ebert's review of the movie saying like that's the bravest thing she does in a movie where she goes down into a dark basement to shoot a serial killer. The courage she shows and just telling a bunch of.
But look at all of them. Is this like a montage of all of the?
I just clipped a bunch of things.
Oh, you made this?
Yeah.
You should totally put this on YouTube and explain what it is. I like that. Oh, hello.
Yeah, even the nice man who wants to take her on a date. He's got this evil smile.
No, it's not his smile. It's his eye. Am I doing it?
You're doing it.
I'm doing one over here and one over here. Like I'm doing it.
Oh, you're good. You're good with eye stuff.
Thank you.
Well, now it's just
men leering at Clarice.
Now it's just going on repeat. But the point is, it's not the intuitive way to make a thriller like this. It's like seeing the material and saying, the really upsetting thing is about all of her going about this world, even in the non-gruesome, non-killer parts, living in this
vulnerable
man's
she
world,
is,
how vulnerable she
right,
is.
and
Yeah.
how and there's a line in Red Dragon that I really liked about Will being brave, but I can't remember what it is now. But it was just something very insightful that Lecter says, like, you're scared, but you're brave, or something like, I don't know. But that's the true courage or whatever. That's what's true about both of them, Clarice and Will.
Yeah, and
that they do it anyway. They're compelled.
Bravery isn't the absence of fear; it's being afraid and doing it anyway,
Anyway, right,
doing
yeah.
something anyway.
Right, but I mean, but that's what's special about both of them. It's why Lecter even bothers with either of them. It's because they are putting themselves and their brain at risk to immerse themselves in this world for good.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing it.
In Clarice's case, everybody says, like, don't let him in, don't let him in. If he starts getting into your head, leave. Don't give him an inch at all. But she does it anyway because she needs to solve this thing.
Well, she's got instinct. She knows that he needs to get in. Without access, he's not
Yeah,
gonna give her
yeah.
access.
Because
it's reciprocal access. Like, the more you let him fuck with you, but you stand and, like, you take it, not in, just in the small ways. Just in the, he wants to see. That's a voyeur right there. Like in the movie where he asks if he can see the pictures and keep them, and if he can see the videotapes of the women. It's just like, man, you like to look at some stuff.
And we'll get to Red Dragon, but we're talking about all of this as preamble and also to set up what makes Silence of the Lambs so special, why it resonates the way it does, why people are so drawn to it, even if you don't notice all this extra shit going on. And all of that is what is missing in Red Dragon, in taking a very similar story and not injecting it with anything that's not on the page.
Right, and that is exactly why Silence of the Lambs feels special and unlike anything. And then Red Dragon, I immediately went, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it feels like everything.
Yeah, it feels like exactly. It feels like everything, and you're right.
That's good, love.
Sans the amazing source material, it would have been nothing, but it was such a compelling story. And really good casting, I would say. I mean, even though the writing...
What a cast. You have...
I love the chick from Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, Emily Watson.
Is that her name?
Emily Watson, yeah.
Anyway, I like her name.
I always get... there's like a ever since I was... I don't know how old. I had like a triangle in my head. You've got Emma Thompson.
That's why.
You've got Emily Watson. And then you've got Emma Watson, who plays Hermione.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And it's don't you get them mixed up. Okay, just a little more preamble. So they try to get Thomas Harris for a long time to write a sequel because at the end of Silence of the Lambs, Dr. Lecter escapes. Clarice has won the day, but Lecter got away, and he calls her. This seems like a sequel setup, but it's one that never comes. But then eventually, Jonathan Demme expresses interest. Jodie Foster wants to do it. Anthony Hopkins wants to do it, and eventually Harris writes a book, Hannibal. It is a weird, crazy book, and Jonathan Demme reads it, and he's like, "This is not for me. No, thank you."
That makes me want to read it.
Jodie Foster reads it, says, "This is a betrayal of the character. I'm out." Anthony Hopkins reads it, and he's like, "You'll give me how much money?" And so they hire Ridley Scott.
Eats the book.
They hire Ridley Scott. Damn it! I meant to look into the William Blake thing because I've heard like
I don't know what you're talking about.
the poet and painter who paints the Red Dragon. I just wanted to know more about that.
Okay.
I meant to, so if you came to this for insights on that, sorry.
Turn around.
Ridley Scott directs it. Nobody really likes it, but it makes a lot of money. And literally a year later,
Who's in it?
Hopkins, Julianne Moore plays Clarice.
Oh, okay. Oh, I did see it.
Yeah. And
Don't remember liking
yeah, it's a bad movie. I haven't seen it in 15 years. I was going to watch some clips. I didn't get around to it.
Got it.
But it's kind of this is not what we wanted. We wanted just Silence of the Lambs again. And so Dino De Laurentiis, who owns the rights to the Lecter properties, is like, all right, fine. And very, very quickly makes Red Dragon, a movie he'd already made once before, already produced once before as Manhunter. So they hire Brett Ratner, the director of the Rush Hour movies. to make a movie that is very similar in its story, at least, and setting to Silence of the Lambs. They bring back Hopkins. They have Edward Norton as Will Graham in the lead, Ralph Fiennes as Francis Dollarhide, the Tooth Fairy, the Red Dragon, and
Really
then we
good
also Philip Seymour Hoffman's there.
Right. And whoever plays the freaking psychiatrist at the asylum, fantastic.
Anthony Held. I'm delicious.
Fantastically punchable face.
I mean, the most gleefully shitty person.
Well, and just always sweaty and always like
yes,
yeah.
That guy always like he's in so much less of both of Silence of the Lambs and this than I ever remember. But he like always looms so large in my
He's
memory.
got one of those strange makeups of a face where all of his features are in the center. And then he's just got all this extra face all the way around. So he doesn't just have a big forehead. He's got wide set cheeks. He's got a big chin. So it's like he's just one big bullseye. You just want to punch him right in the.
He's asking for it. Yes,
He's got a bullseye on his
face
face.
is asking for it.
He really does. Study it next time you see his face.
Okay.
And then his hair just extends everything. It's like, yeah, that's a bullseye.
So we've got this great book. We've got this great cast. Got a bad director. Oh, but we also brought back the screenwriter from Silence of the Lambs who declined to work on Hannibal, but he's back. He'll make this good, right? All right. Well, we've said we're not, it's fine, but nothing special.
I was enjoying it. I enjoyed it all the way through, but that's because I like something that has this much of a psychology in it and like a backstory in it. Like I said, I already like. I'm gonna like it even when it's crap.
And I think not being familiar with the book, not being familiar with Manhunter will make this seem better than it is because I've seen the better versions. And I don't like to do they changed this from the book, but I think that when you don't carry over crucial things, to me, the whole the point of the story of Red Dragon is the mirror of Will Graham and the Tooth Fairy.
They spend no time with that.
I mean, Will Graham's barely a character, and Edward Norton, a great actor, is terrible in this movie, I think.
I mean, he's fine.
I'll blame Brett Ratner for not giving him anything to work with.
But that's interesting that he's supposed to be a mirror of Will because of Anthony Hopkins' power and because of what he made the series such a phenomenon. They make him the conduit between both of them. So it's like okay, so Anthony Hopkins is Will's mirror and Anthony Hopkins is the Tooth Fairy's mirror. He gets to be both.
It's true.
And the Tooth Fairy and Will don't ever seem like. It seems weird when they meet. We care about each other.
Because of that, it's kind of both and neither. Hopkins shouldn't be in this movie.
Right.
His very presence, all the marketing centers him. His face is giant on the poster. He's in so little of this movie, and more than that. What does he do in the movie that affects anything else in the movie? I was trying to think.
Without him, though, I don't think I would have liked it.
That's really because
I mean, Harvey Keitel's part. I just feel like Will needed to spend time looking like the sane person so that you could see both. I don't know. I feel like without putting him next to Lecter, you don't get to see how normal and vulnerable Will is.
So his story is he was working with Lecter. Lecter was a psychiatrist and was helping him, catch a serial killer. And then it turned out Lecter himself was the serial killer. And then he cut Will up really badly. And then Will successfully apprehended him.
Stabbed him one time. I sliced you.
Sorry, I think in the book he just he cut his face, which left him with scarring, and they don't have that. In the movie.
So then that's just another way
he just looks like a pretty man.
It's another way he can bond with the Tooth Fairy in his cleft palate.
Yep. This encounter with Lecter severely scarred him. He had to go to he got to be institutionalized for a while, and through the course of being dragged out of retirement because he's the best in the business at thinking like a serial killer, he realizes he needs Lecter's help. So he goes, and what Manhunter and what especially the book Red Dragon are about is how much that's going to fuck him up to go speak with Lecter. Whereas in this movie, it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything to him.
See, the way I take it in the movie is, I already talked my wife into letting me go to Vegas, so I might as well get a lap dance.
That's true.
That's how I take it. I'm away, and the cat's going to play. I might as well go see Lecter, too.
Might as well go see my ex.
No, let me do all the things she'll tell me no to do, and then go home.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how it felt.
There is that.
Well, no. I'm saying that's because that's a reason why the movie is bad. Is that's how it felt, not about like, oh, this is a huge risk for him.
Right.
For me, it felt like, oh, you love doing this. You even made up 2 more reasons to go see him.
Which, yes, he does love doing it.
God, he loves it.
But
It's his best friend.
in Silence of the Lambs, Clarice's conversations with Lecter help her realize things about herself and help her solve the case. Whereas, does anything that he gets from Lecter and Red Dragon help him with the case?
That's because we're coming in after the pupil's already been tutored, right? Like, I mean, what we don't see is their whole history before. So, I mean, you can imagine Clarice in that spot, but before Lecter was put in jail and while they were just working together. So it makes sense that he'd come as someone who's already seasoned. And that's what the sense you get. They're like, Will's already really good at this. That's why he's been brought back in. You don't need him to have these revelations. He's just trying to like get someone to jog his old muscles.
But that's way less interesting.
Yeah, but
okay,
the
so if
killer
you're not going to get any of that, then he should at least affect the story. The only thing he does is he sicks the Tooth Fairy on Will.
I mean, we know why.
So the message is like, oh, shouldn't have talked to Lecter after all. Whereas Sounds of the Lambs, it's, no, you had to because he helps her solve it. He's her mentor.
But that's the whole point, right? Will is a little bit crazy. He's like walking that line, and it's probably best for him to just repair boats and stay the fuck out of it. But like, he can't help get close to the crazy, so he goes and sees Lecter, even though it's not good for him. It doesn't actually help the case that much, and in fact, it's the only thing that puts his family in danger. I think that's the point, is that this job, that's why Lecter says no one's ever going to be safe that's close to you or something like that. No one, it's one of those things. But that's the point. He's driven by something not healthy.
But because the movie is so otherwise not about Will Graham's journey, I think that's what irritates me about it.
Right, it's not earned. No.
Yeah. Whereas Ralph Fiennes as the killer is very
great.
good, and Emily Watson as his blind love interest.
Is there a blind love interest in the book?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes the story.
Is the blind love interest?
It just, yeah, I mean, but I did fall I was kind of left thinking, okay, he had the dead body that he was going to put her hand in, right? The way he gets away from all the cops is that he sets his house on fire. Uh-huh. He's got his blind girlfriend over, and he's like, I won't let you have her. He's fighting himself. He's already put a gun in his mouth once in the movie, making you think he could be suicidal over not wanting to kill her, so he'd kill himself. And then you think he shoots himself in the head, and then it's chaos, it's a fire, but she's blind, so she's feeling around, she feels a head that's been blown off.
Mm-hmm. But you're saying because...
But I guess I thought he really did care about her. But
I think he did.
But he had that body ready to shoot in the head, to use her, to put her through that much pain, and possibly she wouldn't have found her way out of that burning house. So that's I was wondering, like, did he really actually feel, I mean, after he saw her go on a date with that
that's what sets him off. But also seeing her wander around his house makes him realize, I can't do this. My life is not fit to share with anyone else. Look at my fucking house.
She's by my death pond outside.
Yeah.
She's gonna find all the feet.
But before that, he certainly cares about her.
No, I know. He does seem to be struggling with not wanting her to die in that house burning scene. And then, no, it was a big setup because he knew the cops were going to swarm him because he just sent a journalist, hurtling down a friggin' street in a antique rocking chair or whatever.
and on camera at the Brooklyn Museum, like, knocks a bunch of ladies out.
Right. So he needed to bring them in, and he needed her to verify his death to them.
But
they gave him time.
What sucks about this movie is that it's so like clumsy and lazy that you, a smart person, can figure that out, but the movie doesn't like help you establish any part of the mechanics of this, and that it gets, you think he's dead, and then it's just like Harvey Keitel calls Edward Norton. He's like, bad news. He was actually alive.
That's not his bones.
Not his body.
It's not his bones.
Turns out
Right.
his bones, not his body.
Go through all of that, traumatize the only person you've ever kind of loved just because you want to kill this one guy. Isn't your thing that you like to kill whole families? And like why make your last thing you do something you're not even into?
Because he's
Why?
Well, the movie hasn't done the work about this, but he feels like Graham now is in he's in a cat and mouse tete-a-tete with him.
Like, well, if he's alive, I'll never get to keep doing the things I want to do.
Even if
He's
even,
the only one
not
that can
even
catch
this
me.
like it has to come to this. This is destiny. We have to.
The movie makes you think that
face
he's
off against
doing
each
it
other.
because he wants to make Lecter proud. You know,
Yeah,
Lecter
maybe
gave
that.
him the address, so like if he doesn't use that address to see it through, like he had to find a way to get Edward Norton back to his home in Marathon, Florida, or he doesn't get to use the gift that Lecter gave him.
And he writes the letter to Lecter, and he has his scrapbook where he has the clippings about Lecter. Other than that, the movie doesn't show you at all of Lecter being a presence in Dolarhyde's life.
No.
Just another thing that sucks about it.
Glad I didn't talk to you before we watched it, because I did enjoy it, but
The blind lady who is with a guy who's ugly.
he's not
Is
ugly.
quote unquote ugly,
But no one
but
even-
can't see it. That's like a classic trope.
Okay, but even the movie doesn't think he's ugly. They go out of their way to explain that he's not. Only he sees himself. that
Yeah,
way.
I wonder. I mean, yes, it's like in like Ready Player One. You remember the character who's like in the virtual reality. She's super
right.
hot, but she's like, "Don't look at me. You wouldn't like the way I look." But she has like a tiny birthmark on her face,
Right.
and otherwise it's like an extraordinary beauty. I don't know. Yeah, I can't tell if that's
You're not good at this part.
okay.
I mean, you're not good at reading these. I don't know. You're not a face person.
Wait. I look at Ray Fiennes in this movie and I'm like, he doesn't look like a monster, but I can't tell. Is that the point, or is the movie just stupid and is like, look how horrific he is?
I don't think he's supposed to look like a monster. I think he's supposed to look incredibly average, but troubled.
Yeah.
And his haircut is supposed to let you know that he doesn't care a whole lot about taking care of himself. Because the
Okay.
haircut is.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's in the military, right? He was.
He was.
Okay, well, that's a military haircut. That's fine. But the tattoo is extensive. And they show his wiener. Just want to say that.
Yeah.
He runs around the house just to swing it.
That was one of the things I remember the most is you see his dick. Not as much as I thought you did.
Yeah, but no, it's where you see his dick. You see it while he's running away from you through his legs. That dick is so long.
I don't think so.
that
No,
it's
I think he's
swinging
facing the
around.
camera.
No, well, you see it then too, but then he's
Okay.
going up the stairs. It's like, well, there's his dick hanging right between
Yeah, and
his
it's like
legs.
2 feet down. Yeah, no wonder he wanted to do that.
What's it
What's
doing?
the point of taking this role? He's like, I spent
Be a
6 months
prosthetic.
building my body.
Did he?
Yeah. The tattoo took 8 hours to apply.
Each day?
No, just I assume just you only had to do it. I don't know.
God, yeah, just stretch your shoulder, get naked several times, just robe multiple times, walk around this house all day in this, yeah, because it's like American History X when it's just that bright black swastika tattoo that's on Edward Norton, and you're just like, what a shitty thing to have to just redraw that stupid swastika every day. It's so bright black. It's like tattoos don't look like that, and it's supposed to be an old tattoo. It's supposed to be green. They turn green. They all do.
I know, and if he forgot to take it off before leaving set, he like goes to get coffee.
He goes to the gym. Shit!
Or he's a method actor, so he's just living the role.
Is he a method actor?
He is, yeah.
Oh, that makes me want to watch a documentary of him and not be his friend.
Yeah, of course. There's that awesome photo of Daniel Day-Lewis as Abraham
I
Lincoln
love
getting at a restaurant eating a hot dog.
But you don't want to be his friend. And then Jim Carrey too, right? Another method actor.
Yeah.
That was a really good documentary. And Brad Pitt's method acting is that he has to be eating. That's it. That's his whole
method.
method.
Here's
But he
my
does it
method.
in
I
every
eat.
fucking movie, and it works.
Oh, I hate it. I hate eating.
I find when I drink
wanted
or
to-
eat on this podcast, I sound way better.
I wanted to just call out a few other things that suck.
All right.
The opening scene where it's a prologue. Lecter is, out in high society and he's
got
attending
his-
the opera.
He's got his rockin' pony.
He's got his rockin' pony and his sweet rang. No, he doesn't have an earring. But he's not dad boner. He notices that the flautist keeps messing up, and then it cuts to he's hosting like the board of directors of the opera
What a fabulous movie boost.
at his house for dinner, and they're
What
like,
is this
"Oh,
crude attack?"
Hannibal, you're so great at entertaining. I only wish our flautist wasn't missing right now. How tragic!
It does really
It's the
ruin-
most ridiculous. Okay, but I think the worst part of the movie, or just the thing that just really illustrates
The end.
how clunky when you compare it to Silence of the Lambs and how elegant that is. When you're introduced to Ralph Fiennes' Dollarhide, the camera's just going around his mansion, and in voiceover, whatever, his
a
house, his creepy old
retirement home.
house. I know it used to be a retirement home. As the camera's panning around his creepy old house, voiceover flashback from his abusive grandmother or
But-
mother, a device that's never used in the rest of the movie.
It was very jarring, but I needed that information.
Yeah. Come up with a better way to give us that
Yeah, it's a
information than
weird-
just saying, all right, before you meet this guy, gotta let you know, his grandmother's really abusive. She called his dick really small and then she's going to cut it off. And then
What
also,
she did.
that is what she did.
She didn't call it small.
It-
She said, take that thing between your legs and stretch it. You want me to cut it off? I'll cut it off. She never called it small. She just made him stretch it.
Sorry, I got the word small wrong.
Well, I'm just...
She's complaining about his big dick. One day
Yeah.
you're going to run upstairs and
Ray
people are going to
Fiennes'
see from behind and it's going to be huge.
What was even weirder, though, about that voiceover is that he's interacting with it. So it's like, I know they're trying to say this is happening in his head, but it's very much happening as a voiceover for us. And it's a super famous actress from, like, The Notebook and from fucking the movie we did here with Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, Ellen Burstyn.
Yeah, Ellen Burstyn.
It was.
And then they showed the picture three times, of who the grandmother actually is. It looks nothing like Helen Burstyn. It's the
I had no idea.
craziest
I didn't
looking
know.
Fucking picture. It's like a
Good
little
on you.
girl
You're
painted in old lady makeup. It's a crazy picture.
Mm-hmm.
Good on me. What?
for knowing it was Ellen Burstyn. I didn't.
Oh.
And that it wasn't Ellen Burstyn in the photo.
Right. The photo is no one.
At the end of the movie, Edward Norton is explaining to his wife, he's like, gee whiz, you know, he wasn't born a monster, he was made a monster. He didn't want to be evil. This abuse made him evil. But the movie hasn't, once again, unearned. No, they haven't done the legwork to establish that he was a monster created from child abuse and tons of
Yes,
other horrific
they
circumstances.
do.
No, they don't. They have that one fucking pan, and they have him yelling.
All you fucking need.
That is not all you need.
That is horrific, and that's just him showing up in her room because he peed the bed. If he's already peeing the bed, it's already because he's being abused. That all you need to know is a little bit about child abuse to know that is the tip of the fucking iceberg. You can only imagine what's happened to him.
No, because
It's
then the rest of the movie
plenty.
you're seeing him doing horrific things. I think you need more to humanize him.
Wait, I thought you said. I'm saying that was plenty backstory for me to understand what happened to him. Also, look at where
guess
he lives.
I'm
Look at
not
what he's
saying I
surrounded
need
by.
more backstory. I just need this to be a thread that continues a little bit more.
It does. There's a whole love interest part. They give him a whole human for you to see.
Yeah,
that he's got
that's separate from what I'm talking about,
from
which is
Edward
how
Norton
he
or
was.
seeing the humanity.
Yes.
Well, he met the love interest. She then talked to him about everything that had happened. She was super lovely. I'm pretty sure Edward Norton understood.
The humanity of his child that comes from his childhood.
He got the big book.
Regardless.
He got the big death book with all the fucking pages.
Harvey Keitel, bad. Very lazy, uninteresting performance.
He's Harvey Keitel. He gets to do whatever.
Yeah, he's a lazy actor a lot of the time. And you compare him, he was played by Scott Glenn in Silence of the Lambs, who is amazing. Anyone else? Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's fun. He's
I immediately
his creepy.
pegged him as that's the one. He's the killer.
He's the-
just so creepy.
Yeah.
And I love him, but he was, and then
But he's never a killer. He'll like call you
that's
and
not true.
he'll like ejaculate on your head, but he'll not kill you.
Oh, you're right. He's just like a molester or something. I'm trying to think.
He'll just molest you.
Well, he was something awful. Are you sure he's never
Mission
been the
Impossible
killer?
3, he was the bad guy.
doesn't
Listen,
matter.
I'm not denying that he's killed before in films.
Thank you.
Thomas Harris. Let me just say one thing about him, and then we can go.
Okay. Believe it, I see it.
Never wrote another book after Hannibal. He wrote Hannibal Rising, which he did because the producer of the guy who, Dino De Laurentiis, whose big claim to fame is I own the intellectual property rights to Hannibal Lecter. It's not his only claim, but wants to make another movie. And he's like, Tom, can you write another book? And he's like, I don't want to. And he's like, all right, well, if you don't, I'm just going to have someone else write it. And he's like, God damn it. So he writes a story about young Hannibal in like Lithuania and like his clashes with the Nazi party or whatever. I haven't read it. They made it into a movie. I haven't seen it. But okay, so Thomas Harris wrote one book in 1976 that didn't have Lecter in it, then only wrote Lecter books about gruesome subject matter. Never gave an interview, never did publicity until 2019. He gave an interview to the New York Times because he wrote a new book that was not about Hannibal Lecter, is not about killing at all. It's about like the immigration system in Miami among some like Colombian refugees that I heard was great. He does. He lives in Miami.
It explains the Marathon Florida thing.
It does.
And how it feels like the end of the earth, depending on what
So he
what is his background? I mean,
he's from Mississippi. I think he was in some relationship to the military. He loves animals.
Aww.
He volunteered at an animal wildlife rescue clinic for decades, and apparently the people who worked with him there didn't know. Like, they know his name is Thomas Harris. They didn't know he wrote The Silence of the Lambs.
I've never heard that
until
before.
relatively recently. Somebody just asked him what he did, and he's like, I'm an author. And like, anything we would have heard of. Like, they're asking me, like, yes, you ever read Generation Y?
Or
WHY?
Thirsty?
He's like, yeah, I created Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the American Film Institute's #1 villain of all time. But apparently he's one of these tortured writers who's like, writing is the worst. I fucking hate it. It's a drag.
It's compelled.
Emotional. It's it's a battle. It's so hard. Some days you can't think of anything.
But like every writer is that. But go ahead.
Yeah, but there's like, you get both. You get some who are like, it's a job. I just pound out my words every day and it's fine. And then you get people like him and. I'm kind of like that. I wish to be a more productive writer, but I'm like, I get depressed by.
Well, I think that you care very much about substance and about something interesting on the page. That's the problem with people who pound it out. People who can't edit. You over edit. I mean, you don't over edit, but you very much care about the end product, and I think that's
I
good.
do, but okay. So he said something so interesting. So this is from the New York Times piece. Harris describes writing, quote, Harris describes writing as an almost passive process, something that happens to him rather than something he does. His novels start with a scene that plays in his head. Then he tries to figure out what came before and what came after. He talks about his characters as though they exist in the world, leading parallel lives independent from his books, end quote. And like, that is definitely how I found writing. And I've also, I've written music. It's kind of similar. Like, when you write something, you don't feel like you created it. You're just like,
right.
I don't know, man. I just sort of like discovered something, or I wrote it down, but I didn't like think it up, or
right.
It's some way in which like the neurons in your head firing give you the words, and it just all seems kind of random and by chance. Mm-hmm. And you just have to do it enough till eventually you get something good. And you're like, ooh, this is new.
Well, see, that's the exact, just a very much more local feeling of anyone that I know that becomes famous isn't the real kind of famous. It's just it's a piece of that, right? Like, anything I created isn't really something I created, especially if it becomes successful. It's like, I didn't really.
I know what you're saying, but in like a very practical sense, it feels like I wrote these,
like you remembered something,
but I don't think
not that you
anybody
made it
actually writes something. Like anybody actually creates something. And his whole thing in this interview is like, all these things in my books, like these are things that happen. There's nothing new in the world. Every horrific thing has already been done to somebody somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then the article like awkwardly is like, which is why Harris is frustrated when people accuse him of being a psychopath, or like, I guess people on the internet are like, Thomas Harris probably actually does these kinds of murders.
You ever heard of DNA, asshole? I think
DNA. Oh, sorry.
I think they would have figured it out by now. Leave him alone.
So he is kind of like the Will Graham. Like, to live in this world is very difficult, and that's why
why he retreats to Florida.
Hard for him, yes. Why he just spends time with his animals. The big picture at the top of this article is him holding a possum, and it's cute. And then the final thing. Okay, so
you said that was the final thing.
this is part B
motherfucker.
of the final thing.
Okay.
So Harris says, quote, "The Hannibal character still occurs to me, and I wonder sometimes what it's up to," end quote. When you read the books are told by, a third-person narrator. Characters are usually referred to by their last name, like Graham walked into the room, and then Lecter is always called Dr. Lecter by the narrator. And when there are descriptions of Lecter, of Dr. Lecter, it's like told in the present tense, which is just kind of a weird distinction. So he's sort of, it's like, he says, Dr. Lecter's eyes are maroon, and they reflect the light redly in tiny points. Graham felt each hair bristle on his nape. And so he's like,
Right.
this exists. This is real and present tense. And the things that are happening in the story are past tense, but Lecter is a real thing, and you can go see him.
It almost seems like a mistake. Yeah. Because he's writing him completely in the present, and then the things that Will felt in the past.
Well, the things that Lecter does happen in the past tense, but just descriptions about who he is.
Right.
It's present tense. It's a
Like
very
he's
interesting
looking at him
writing
in the room.
choice.
And my girlfriend is beautiful. And right. And then she kicked this guy in the nuts.
Yep.
Yeah. Just a great example that I gave.
Yeah, it's great. This has been a great, kind episode.
Oh.
Harris has described feeling unnerved by his charismatic
damn
visit.
it.
He once wrote that he was not comfortable in the presence of Dr. Lecter. Not sure at all that the doctor could not see me. So somewhere out there, Dr. Lecter is watching you. Have we answered the question that we started the episode with?
Is it good?
That was not the question.
What the fuck was the question? Oh, man.
Who you got in the Super Bowl?
Oh,
It was what time does the Super Bowl start?
the rhinos.
Yeah. All right. They got a real good team this year. Who's in the Super Bowl, Lacey?
Oh, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Okay, yay. And then the ones who have the really good guy, who I'm going to think of in just
That's
a
right.
second. The Chiefs?
That's right. You got
Wait,
it.
let me think of the guy. Onomatopoeia. It's something like that.
His name is not Onomatopoeia.
Okay, but it's something like that. It's Kalapepa. It's good pepper. It's good on ya. Is it a C at all?
There's a C in the name.
Okay. Is it Mel? Charmel.
Okay, first name is also the first name of a person I'm friends with.
Patrick Dempsey.
That's right, Patrick.
Malone. Patrick
That's
Patrick Melichapi.
What?
It doesn't matter. Just tell me.
Patrick Mahomes.
Damn it!
Why? We should have kept going with that.
I was so close.
You were close, but I think people
Melichapi.
listening to this are like, no, I want to see how this plays out. Give her more clues. All right, next episode we'll play 20 questions.
We'll play.
Until
no,
then,
it's more like word association with me.
we should do that every episode.
All right.
Okay, that'll be our new recurring
You
bit.
find my mind fascinating, and that's
We always
sweet.
keep up with our recurring bits, like previously on Load Bearing Beams and
We really
Mickey's
stick
Clubhouse
with it, right.
Corner. But,
Mickey's Clubhouse.
you can find us online at loadbearingbeams.com, and if you go to loadbearingbeams.com/movies, you can see all the movies we've covered. Find a movie that you like and listen to that episode.
What's going on,
guarantee.
Paris? Hey, Paris.
I was trying to
Oh,
do a
I
good,
was stepping on it.
Grr.
You want to do it again?
but what do you even, hello, Paris?
We have a weird amount of people in Paris that like us. Or France.
Oh, yes, in France.
In
Lots of people in France like us.
France.
But the United States has taken the lead again.
Yeah, they're
luckily.
it's more in the United States. But second by a long shot is Paris.
Is France.
France. I keep saying
We don't
France.
know. It doesn't give you geographic.
It doesn't. I
references
just it
in
might be
France.
better.
But whatever. Goodbye.
Okay. Okay, love you. Bye.
3, 4. Everybody, love bearing beams, love bearing beams, love